The Golden Scale restaurant sat at the heart of the Galactic Trade Hub, a massive space station where species from across the universe came to make deals, sign treaties, and eat food that cost more than most people earned in a year. The restaurant was famous for two things. First, it served the finest cuisine in the known galaxy. Second, it was owned by a dragon. Waiter.HFY was his name, and he was terrifying to look at. He stood 12 feet tall when he walked on his back legs. His scales were the color of dark gold, and his eyes burned like small suns. When he spread his wings, they could block out the light from the station's artificial sky. He had claws that could tear through metal and teeth that could bite through stone. He was over 400 years old, and he had built his restaurant empire from nothing. The Golden Scale was not just a place to eat. It was a place where the powerful came to be seen. Diplomats from the Serpentine Collective would sit at one table, while generals from the Mantis Dominion sat at another. Billionaires from water worlds would drink expensive wine next to warlords from desert planets. Everyone behaved themselves at the Golden Scale, because nobody wanted to anger Waiter.HFY. Morgan had worked at the restaurant for 3 years. She was 26 years old, with brown hair that she kept tied back in a simple ponytail and green eyes that noticed everything. She was human, which meant she was considered one of the lesser species in the galactic order. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for about 50 years. They had no great military power, no ancient history, and no special abilities. They were just ordinary people trying to find their place among giants. But Katie had something that many other species lacked. She paid attention. She watched. She learned. When she first started working at the Golden Scale, the other servers told her she would not last a month. Humans rarely did. The work was hard, the customers were demanding, and the dragons who ran the place had no patience for mistakes. But Katie did not make mistakes. She memorized the menu in 3 days. She learned the names and preferences of every regular customer in 2 weeks. She taught herself to read draconian body language, something that took most species years to master. The dragons noticed. They did not say anything, because dragons rarely gave compliments to lesser species, but they noticed. Katie was given the best sections. She was allowed to serve the most important guests. She was trusted on this particular evening. The restaurant was busier than usual. Ambassador Zelrix from the Serpentine Collective was visiting, and Waiter.HFY was hosting him personally. The ambassador was negotiating a new trade agreement that would open shipping routes through Serpentine space. This was important for many reasons, but especially for human colonies. The new routes would cut travel time in half and make goods much cheaper for ordinary people. Katie was working the floor near the private booths. When the new waiter arrived, he came through the staff entrance about an hour after the dinner rush began. He was tall for a human, with dark hair and a friendly smile. He walked up to the floor manager, a thin dragon named Sareth, and introduced himself. "I am Derek," he said. "I was transferred from the branch on Nexus Station. I was told to report for duty tonight." Sareth checked his tablet and nodded. "Yes, I see your name here. Take Section 4. Katie will show you around." Katie looked up from the drink she was preparing. She smiled politely at the new waiter and waved him over. "Welcome to the Golden Scale. It is busy tonight, so I will keep the tour short. Follow me." She showed him the layout of the floor, the location of the service stations, and the path to the kitchen. Derek nodded along and asked all the right questions. He seemed professional and well-trained. His uniform was perfect. His posture was correct. He knew the menu without needing to check it. But something was wrong. Katie could not explain it at first. It was just a feeling, a small voice in the back of her head that said, "Pay attention." So she did. She watched Derek as he worked, studying him the same way she had studied the dragons when she first arrived. The first thing she noticed was how he held his serving tray. It was technically correct, but it was too perfect. He held it like someone who had practiced in front of a mirror, not like someone who had carried trays for years. Real servers develop small habits over time. They tilted the tray slightly to one side. They adjusted their grip when it got heavy. Derek held his tray like it was a prop. The second thing she noticed was the tension in his shoulders. He smiled and made small talk with customers, but his body was tight. His eyes moved constantly, scanning the room even while he was taking orders. He was watching the private booths. He was watching Vorthax. The third thing she noticed made her blood run cold. When Derek turned to walk toward the kitchen, Katie saw a faint outline beneath his collar. It was small, maybe 3 inches long, and it pressed against the fabric just enough to create a shadow. Most people would never notice it. But Katie was not most people. She knew what it was. She had seen pictures in security briefings that Sarah sometimes left on his desk. It was a compression blade, a weapon designed to cut through dragon scales. It was the kind of weapon that assassins used. Katie said nothing. She kept her face calm and continued working her section. Her hands did not shake as she poured wine for a group of merchants. Her voice did not tremble as she described the evening specials to a pair of diplomats. But inside, her mind was racing. Derek was not a transfer from Nexus Station. He was not even a real waiter. He was here to kill someone, and Katie had maybe 20 minutes to figure out what to do about it. She looked across the room at Vorthax, who was laughing at something Ambassador Zelrix had said. The dragon had no idea that Death was walking toward him carrying a dessert menu. Katie took a deep breath and made a decision. She was going to stop this. She just had to figure out how. Katie kept working. She smiled at customers. She refilled glasses. She delivered plates of food that cost more than her monthly rent. But her eyes never left Derek for long. The fake waiter was good at his job. He moved through the restaurant like he belonged there, chatting with guests and carrying plates with ease. Anyone watching would think he was just another employee doing his work. But Katie could see the pattern in his movements. Every few minutes, he found a reason to walk past the private booths. Every time he did, his eyes would flick toward Vorthax and Ambassador Zelrix. He was studying them. He was learning their positions, their guards, their habits. He was planning. Katie needed more information. She needed to be certain before she acted. If she was wrong about Derek, she would lose her job. She would be blacklisted from every restaurant in the station. Her career would be over. But if she was right and did nothing, people would die. Important people. And the blame would fall on humans everywhere. She waited until the floor manager was busy with a complaint from a wealthy customer. Then she slipped through the door that led to the staff areas. The hallway was empty. Everyone was either in the kitchen or on the floor. Katie walked quickly to the small office where Sareth kept the employee records. The door was locked, but Katie knew where the emergency key was hidden. All the senior staff did. She opened the door, stepped inside, and closed it behind her. The office was dark, except for the glow of the computer terminal on the desk. Katie typed quickly. She accessed the employee database and searched for new transfers. Her heart was beating fast, but her fingers were steady. She had learned long ago that panic never helped anything. The search results came up. There were 3 new employees added in the past week. 2 kitchen workers and 1 janitor. No servers. No one named Derek. She searched again, this time looking at all transfers from Nexus Station in the past month. The results were the same. Nothing. No one. Derek did not exist. Katie sat back in the chair and thought about what this meant. Someone had added his name to the system just long enough for him to get past the door. They had given him a uniform, a section, and access to the most important guests in the restaurant. This was not a simple murder plot. This was a professional operation. She thought about the timing. Ambassador Zelrix was here to sign a trade deal that would help human colonies. If something happened to him or to Vorthax tonight, there would be no deal. Worse than that, if the killer appeared to be human, the blame would fall on her species. The dragons would be furious. The Serpentine people would demand justice. Humans would be banned from galactic trade. Colonies would starve. This was not just about killing two important people. This was about destroying humanity's future. Katie closed the terminal and left the office. She locked the door behind her and returned the key to its hiding place. Her mind was working fast, turning the problem over and over like a puzzle box. She could not go to security. If she made accusations without proof, she would be arrested. The station guards would not believe a human waitress over someone who appeared in the official records. By the time they figured out the truth, it would be too late. She could not cause a scene. If Derek realized he had been discovered, he might attack immediately. The restaurant was full of innocent people. Many of them would die in the chaos. And even if Vorthax survived, he would be humiliated. A dragon saved by a human in front of his guests. The shame would be unbearable. He might blame her for the entire incident. She could not warn the other staff. She did not know who could be trusted. If the assassin had people inside the restaurant who helped him get in, they might be anywhere. The floor manager, the kitchen staff, anyone. Katie walked back onto the restaurant floor and took her position near the service station. She had maybe 15 minutes left. Derek was getting closer to the private booths with each pass he made. Soon he would make his move. She watched him carry a tray of appetizers to a table near the back. As he set down the plates, she saw him glance at his wrist. He was checking the time. He was on a schedule. Katie told herself. You are human. This is what humans do. We think. We plan. We find solutions when everyone else gives up. She looked at the table where Vorthax sat with Ambassador Zelrix. The dragon was massive, powerful, and proud. He had lived for 4 centuries. He had built an empire. He was not the kind of creature who accepted help from lesser species. If Katie ran up to him shouting about assassins, he would have her thrown out. But what if she did not shout? What if she was quiet? What if she was subtle? Katie's eyes fell on the stack of cloth napkins at the service station. They were white, pressed perfectly, and made of expensive fabric. Every server used them to polish glasses and wipe tables. An idea began to form in her mind. She could not speak to Vorthax directly, but she could write. She had spent months learning to write in the draconian language, practicing the strange symbols late at night in her tiny apartment. She had never told anyone about this hobby. It had seemed pointless at the time, just a way to pass the hours. But now it might save lives. Katie picked up a napkin and reached for the pen in her apron pocket. Her hand was steady. Her breathing was calm. She had 15 minutes, a piece of cloth, and a few drops of ink. It would have to be enough. Katie stood at the service station with the napkin in her hand. Around her, the restaurant continued its elegant dance of servers and guests, clinking glasses and quiet conversations. No one paid attention to the young human woman with the pen. She thought carefully about what to write. Dragons did not waste time with long explanations. They respected strength and directness. If she wrote too much, Vorthax might think she was being dramatic. If she wrote too little, he might not understand the danger. She pressed the pen to the fabric and began to write. The draconian symbols were difficult, full of sharp angles and curved lines that had to be drawn in a specific order. But Katie had practiced for hundreds of hours. Her hand moved smoothly across the napkin. 4 words. That was all she wrote. Listen. Fake waiter. Armed. She looked at the symbols. They were clear and correct. Any dragon would understand them. But would Vorthax believe her? Would he trust the word of a human waitress? There was only one way to find out. Katie folded the napkin neatly and placed it on her tray next to a crystal pitcher of water. She took a deep breath and began walking toward the private booths. Her heart was pounding in her chest, but she kept her face calm. She had served hundreds of important guests over the years. This was just another table. Just another customer. Derek was on the other side of the restaurant, delivering drinks to a group of insect-like creatures from the outer systems. He did not notice Katie moving toward the booths. His attention was on his own timing, his own plan. In about 10 minutes, he would make his way to the private area with a dessert tray. Inside the tray would be the weapon. He would strike fast, kill his targets, and escape in the chaos. At least, that was what he thought would happen. Katie reached the edge of the private section. 2 dragon guards stood at the entrance, their scales dark red and their eyes sharp. They recognized Katie from her years of service and let her pass with a small nod. She walked toward the main booth where Vorthax sat with Ambassador Zelrix. The dragon boss was laughing at something the ambassador had said. Zelrix was a serpentine creature, 12 feet long with iridescent scales that shifted colors when she moved. She was old and wise, one of the most respected diplomats in the galaxy. The trade deal she was negotiating would change the future of a dozen worlds. Katie approached the table with her pitcher raised slightly, the universal gesture of a server offering a refill. Vorthax glanced at her and gave a small wave of permission. Katie stepped closer. "More water, sir?" she asked in a quiet voice. Yes, Vorthax rumbled. He was not really paying attention to her. To him, she was just another servant doing her job. Katie leaned in to fill his glass. As she did, she slipped the folded napkin from her tray and placed it beneath his massive clawed hand. The movement was smooth and quick. Anyone watching would think she was simply adjusting the tablecloth, but then she did something dangerous. She let her fingers rest against his scales for just a moment. The touch was light, barely there, but it was enough to make Vorthax look at her. Their eyes met. Katie did not speak. She did not need to. She simply gave the smallest nod of her head, a tiny movement that directed his attention toward the napkin. Then she glanced across the restaurant toward Derek, who was now walking back from his table with an empty tray. Vorthax's golden eyes followed her gaze. He saw the waiter. He saw nothing unusual, but he also felt the weight of the napkin beneath his hand. He felt the seriousness in the human woman's eyes. Dragons were proud creatures. They did not like to admit that they might need help from lesser species. But they were also old and wise. They had not survived for millions of years by ignoring warnings. Vorthax looked down at the napkin. He unfolded it slowly, keeping it close to his chest so that no one else could see. He read the 4 words written in his own language. Listen. Fake waiter. Armed. His expression did not change. 4 centuries of life had taught him how to hide his emotions. But Katie saw something shift in his eyes. A flash of understanding. A spark of cold anger. He looked back at her. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Vorthax gave the tiniest nod. It was so small that no one else in the restaurant would have noticed. But Katie saw it. He believed her. "Thank you for the water," he said in a casual voice. "You may go." Katie bowed her head respectfully and stepped back from the table. Her job was done. The message was delivered. Now everything depended on Vorthax. She returned to her section and continued working as if nothing had happened. She served drinks. She collected plates. She smiled at customers. But inside she was watching, waiting. Derek was getting closer. He had moved to a station near the kitchen, preparing a dessert tray with careful attention. Katie could see him arranging plates and silverware. She could see him checking his collar, making sure the blade was still in place. 5 minutes. Maybe less. And then Vorthax did something unexpected. He laughed. It was a deep booming sound that echoed through the restaurant. Everyone turned to look at the dragon boss. He was standing up from his seat, stretching his wings slightly like a man waking from a pleasant nap. "My friends," he called out in a warm voice, "I would like to propose a toast to our new human staff member over there." He pointed at Derek with one massive claw. "Come, young man, join us for a moment." Derek froze. His smile stayed in place, but his eyes went wide for just a second. He had no choice. Refusing an invitation from Vorthax would draw too much attention. He set down his tray and began walking toward the private booths. Katie watched him approach his own trap. And for the first time that evening, she allowed herself to smile. Derek walked toward the private booth with the confidence of a man who had done this many times before. His smile was perfect. His posture was relaxed. To anyone watching, he looked like a nervous new employee being honored by his famous boss. But Katie could see the calculation in his eyes. He was thinking, adapting, looking for a way to use this situation to his advantage. Vorthax had called him forward. Vorthax had invited him close. Perhaps this was even better than the original plan. He could strike now, in front of everyone, and disappear in the chaos. He did not know that he was walking into a trap. Vorthax stood at the head of the table, his wings half spread in a gesture of welcome. Ambassador Zelrix watched with polite interest, her serpentine body coiled elegantly on her cushioned seat. The other guests in the private section had turned to watch the small ceremony. Come, Vorthax said, waving Derek closer. "Do not be shy. I like to welcome all new members of my staff personally." Derek stepped between the tables and approached the dragon. He stopped at a respectful distance and bowed his head. "Thank you, sir. It is an honor to work at the Golden Scale." "An honor indeed," Vorthax agreed. His voice was warm and friendly, but his eyes were hard. "Tell me, young man, where did you work before coming here?" "Nexus Station, sir." "The branch there." "Ah, yes. Nexus Station." Vorthax nodded slowly. "I know it well. Tell me, is old Grimshaw still running the kitchen there? The gray-scaled fellow with the bad temper?" Derek did not hesitate. "Yes, sir. He is still there, still yelling at the cooks." It was a good answer. It was exactly what a real employee would say. But Katie saw Vorthax's tail move slightly, curling around behind Derek until it blocked the path back to the main floor. The dragon was cutting off his escape. "That is interesting," Vorthax said softly, "because Grimshaw died 6 months ago. Heart failure. I attended his memorial service myself." The smile finally left Derek's face. For a moment, everything was still. The guests stopped talking. The servers stopped moving. Even the soft music seemed to fade away. Everyone in the private section could feel that something had changed. The air itself felt heavier. Then Derek moved. His hand shot up to his collar, reaching for the compression blade hidden beneath the fabric. He was fast, faster than any normal human should be. His fingers closed around the handle of the weapon and began to pull. But Vorthax was faster. The dragon's arm shot forward like a striking snake. His claws caught Derek's wrist and squeezed. There was a cracking sound as bones broke. Derek screamed, a high-pitched sound that echoed through the restaurant. Vorthax did not stop there. His other hand reached out and tore open Derek's collar, ripping away the uniform to reveal what lay beneath. The compression blade clattered to the floor, but that was not what made the guests gasp. Derek, single quotes, skin was splitting. Beneath the false human appearance, something else was emerging. Gray flesh, sharp angles, eyes that were too large and too dark to be human. The face that had seemed so friendly and normal was peeling away like a mask. revealing the creature underneath. It was a Crixian. The shape-shifting species was known throughout the galaxy for their spies and assassins. They could copy the appearance of almost any humanoid species perfectly. They had been enemies of the Draconian Empire for centuries, and they hated the growing alliance between dragons and humans. A Crixian infiltrator, Ambassador Zelrix hissed, her scales flashing with anger. In the golden scale itself, this is an act of war. 2 dragon guards appeared from the shadows. They had been disguised as wealthy patrons, sitting at nearby tables with drinks in their hands. Now they grabbed the Crixian and forced him to his knees. More guards came from the entrance, surrounding the private section with their weapons drawn. Vorthax reached down and picked up the compression blade. He examined it carefully, turning it over in his massive claws. "This weapon was designed to kill dragons," he said calmly. "And you were disguised as a human. If you had succeeded, the blame would have fallen on an innocent species." The Crixian spat on the floor. His true voice was harsh and clicking, nothing like the smooth tones he had used before. "Humans are weak. They are nothing. The galaxy would be better without them." Vorthax looked at the assassin for a long moment. Then he looked across the restaurant to where Katie stood watching. She had not moved from her position near the service station. Her face was calm, her hands were steady, and her eyes were clear. "You are wrong," Vorthax said quietly. "Humans are many things. Weak is not one of them." He handed the blade to one of his guards. "Take this creature to the holding cells. I will deal with him later. For now, let us not disturb the other guests." The guards dragged the Crixian away through a side door. The other guests in the restaurant had noticed some commotion, but the private section was designed to keep secrets. Most of them thought it was just a minor incident, perhaps a drunk customer or a clumsy server. They returned to their meals and their conversations. Vorthax turned to Ambassador Zelrix and bowed his head. "I apologize for this disruption. It seems that some parties did not want our negotiations to succeed." The Serpentine Ambassador smiled, showing rows of tiny teeth. "Do not apologize. This has been the most entertaining dinner I have had in years, and it has shown me something important." "What is that?" "That humans are worth protecting." She glanced toward Katie with her ancient eyes. "Anyone who inspires such loyalty from their servants is a worthy ally indeed." Vorthax followed her gaze. He watched Katie for a moment, this small human woman who had saved his life with a napkin and a few words. Then he turned back to the ambassador. "Yes," he agreed. "They are worth protecting." The dinner continued. The trade deal was discussed. And somewhere in the holding cells beneath the station, a Crixian assassin sat in darkness and wondered how everything had gone so wrong. The morning after the incident, Katie woke up in her small apartment on the lower levels of the station. Her room was barely bigger than a closet, with a fold-out bed, a tiny kitchen corner, and one window that looked out at the metal walls of the habitat ring. It was not much, but it was hers. She had not slept well. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the Crixian's face peeling away, revealing the monster underneath. She had been so close to that creature. She had trained him. She had shown him around the restaurant. If she had been wrong about him, if she had made a mistake, she would be dead now. But she had not been wrong. And she was not dead. Katie got dressed in her usual uniform and made her way to the golden scale. The restaurant would be closed for the morning after such a busy night. But there was always cleaning to do, tables to set, preparations to make. She expected to spend the day polishing glasses and folding napkins. Trying not to think about what had happened, she did not expect to find Vorthax waiting for her. The dragon boss was sitting at a table in the empty restaurant. Not his usual table in the private section, but a small one near the entrance, designed for species much smaller than him. He looked almost funny sitting there, his massive body squeezed into a space meant for humans or serpentines. His wings were folded tight against his back, and his tail curled around the base of the chair. Katie stopped in the doorway. For a moment, she did not know what to do. In 3 years of working at the Golden Scale, she had never been alone with Vorthax. He was her boss, yes, but he was also one of the most powerful beings in the sector. Dragons did not have private meetings with human waitresses. "Come in," Vorthax said. His voice was different than usual, quieter, less formal. "Sit with me." Katie walked across the empty floor and took the seat across from him. The chair felt very small. She felt very small, but she kept her back straight and her eyes forward. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Vorthax studied her for a long moment. His golden eyes seemed to look right through her, seeing things that other creatures would miss. Finally, he reached into a fold of his robes and pulled out a document. It was printed on expensive paper, the kind used for official contracts. He slid it across the table toward her. Katie looked at the document but did not touch it. "What is this?" "A partnership agreement," Vorthax said. 20% ownership in the Golden Scale, a seat on the Galactic Hospitality Council, a position that no human has ever held. Katie stared at him. She could not believe what she was hearing. "Sir, I just wrote a note on a napkin. I did not do anything special. You saved my life. You could have handled it yourself. You had guards everywhere. You probably knew something was wrong before I even noticed." Vorthax shook his head slowly, and his scales caught the light as he moved. "I suspected, but I did not know. There is a difference between suspicion and certainty. You gave me certainty. You took a risk that could have destroyed your career, your reputation, everything you had built. And you did it quietly, without demanding anything in return." He tapped one massive claw on the table. "Do you know what the Crixians expected would happen last night? They assumed that a human would either panic and cause chaos, or stay silent out of fear and let the assassination happen. They planned for both outcomes. They did not plan for a human who would write a warning on a napkin and trust a dragon to understand." Katie was quiet for a moment. She thought about all the nights she had spent learning the Draconian language, practicing the symbols over and over until her hand cramped. She thought about all the hours she had spent watching the dragons, learning their expressions, their gestures, their moods. She had never known why she did these things. They had just seemed important. "I wanted to understand you," she said finally. "Not because I had to, just because I wanted to." Vorthax smiled. It was a strange expression on a dragon's face, all teeth and scales, but somehow it looked warm. "That is what makes humans special. You are not the strongest species. You are not the fastest or the oldest or the most advanced. But you notice what others ignore. You learn what others dismiss. You act when others freeze." He pushed the document closer to her. "This is not charity, Katie Morgan. This is business. I want you on my side because you are valuable. Not because you are human. Because you are you." Katie looked at the contract. The numbers were bigger than anything she had ever imagined. The title was more important than anything she had ever dreamed. But she did not reach for the pen. "Not yet. I have conditions," she said. Vorthax raised one scaly eyebrow. "Conditions?" "Tuesdays off. I want to visit my family on the colony ships. I want to hire more humans for the restaurant. Not as servers, as managers. People who can learn the way I learned." The dragon laughed. It was a deep rumbling sound that shook the glasses on nearby tables. "You negotiate like a dragon. I think we will work well together." He extended one massive claw toward her. Katie reached out and shook it. Her hand was tiny compared to his, but her grip was firm. Somewhere across the galaxy, in a dark room on a hidden station, Crixian intelligence analysts were updating their files. They had expected the assassination to succeed. They had expected humans to be blamed. They had expected the alliance between dragons and humans to collapse. Instead, they had watched a single human woman defeat their best operative with nothing but observation, courage, and a piece of cloth. The entry in their files was simple. It read, Species, Human, Threat Level, Previously assessed as minimal. Updated assessment. Extreme caution advised. Do not underestimate. Katie Morgan did not know about this file. She was too busy signing a contract that would change her life. But if she had known, she would have smiled. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for only 50 years. They were small. They were young. They had no great powers or ancient history. But they were learning. They were growing. And they were paying attention. The universe was about to find out what that meant.